A very good afternoon to all of you, and thank you so much for joining our session today. We are going to give it another 30 seconds or so to just wait for all our guests to join in, and then we'll shortly start the session. Please wait with us. Thank you so much. A very good afternoon to all of you. And once again, a big thank you for joining the session. We're just going to give it another 10 seconds, and we're going to shortly start the session. Thank you. Once again, a very good afternoon and thank you. And we have a good number of participants now joining for today's conversation. And we are very happy to welcome you on this very timely and pertinent conversation, which is resetting priorities to manage risks for workforce and business resilience. We have a 60-minute session today, which is going to be in collaboration with PARIMA. And we have a great guest lineup who are going to share some key insights, some invaluable messages, and some great guidance along the way. Allow me to just introduce our guests for today, and we are going to immediately dive deep into what we've prepared for you. The topic, of course, is resetting priorities, but in the context of people risk. People risk is MMB's global flagship campaign, which is into its second year of existence. This year, we ran the campaign with 2,600 HR and risk leaders across the globe. And we've got some excellent participation from both sides of the businesses, speaking to how they are concerned and how they are managing and navigating this most expensive and most vulnerable asset known as people risk. People, the people who are the assets. And we're going to be talking through the report findings and what are some of the key messages. We are going to dive deep into the discussion today to hear from our panel on what they think, what are some of the serious businesses and concerns facing businesses today, and what are their messages for us. So we are going to dive into it. Thank you. Allow me to introduce the guests. We have Shweta on the call with us, Shweta Mohanty Roy. She is the head of human resources for SAP India. Shweta provides HR leadership across the region for all entities, including R&D, sales, and services organizations. She is responsible for designing and executing the people strategy, as well as elevating SAP's people culture. Her focus is to deliver future-oriented and holistic people experiences, leveraging globally proven initiatives tailored to local needs, with well-being and employee happiness at the heart of it. Shweta has 20 plus years of experience working with organizations such as Microsoft and Wipro Limited. A very warm welcome to you, Shweta. Thank you for joining the conversation today. We also have Gopal on the call with us. Gopal is the Chief Internal Business Officer and Head CSR with WNS. Gopal has over 27 plus years of experience in finance and accounts, human resources, risk and compliances, cost containment and business strategy and execution. He is on the board of WNS Global Services, member of the CSR committee of the board, and trustee on the Employee Welfare Trusts, being Gratuity Trust and Superannuation Trust of WNS Global Services. He is also a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, an associate member of the Institute of Company Secretaries of India, and a member of Financial Planning Standards Boards of India. Thank you, Gopal, for joining our conversation today. We have Amit Sharma on the event with us today. He is going to share some deep insights into the risk side of businesses. He is Head of Risk and Insurance with Bosch Group, APAC and SAR, and Head of Risk Management Systems with Bosch Limited. Amit comes with over 15 years of experience in different corporate functions, both locally and globally. He has held leadership roles within organizations of international repute across global engineering, R&D, IT, ITES, and insurance industry. He has an extensive experience in all aspects of chief risk and insurance officer roles, which includes strong domain knowledge in insurance, health and safety, facility risk audits, mapping, purchasing, and M&A. A very warm welcome to you, Amit. Thank you for joining our discussion today. And we have Soni, who's representing Parima today. Soni is Head of Corporate Insurance for APAC for Deutsche Bank and also the board member for Parima India. In her role, Soni manages the corporate insurance portfolio for Deutsche Bank for all Asia-Pacific countries. She's also responsible for all employee benefit policies globally, which are covered by the DB captive. She's on the underwriting council for DB Re. She's also the global risk type controller for insurance for third-party risk management and is a part of the global strategic committee of TPRM in Deutsche Bank. Soni has 20 years of experience in insurance and, in her words, never a dull day on the job. A very warm welcome to all our guests and esteemed panel members. Thank you for joining the conversation today. And with your permission, we are going to understand what does the report talk to us. And then we are going to go deep into our panel conversations. Thank you. So in the past, people risk has not been on the agenda for many organizations. However, that is changing as a human element is involved in so many crises. Greater collaboration between HR and risk, that diversity of thinking leads to more risk and better risk management. People, purpose, and profits are keys to organizational success. This means moving risk management beyond the focus on physical assets. As organizations reset for relevance in this new world encompassing viruses, violent conflicts, and climate change, risk management must encompass people, which is workers, customers, society. Purpose could involve the planet or health or both, as well as profit, which ties to risk like supply chain or operations. Part of our message is that to be resilient and react with agility to crisis, you need two critical enablers. Strong foundational business practices. Just 1 second, please. Strong foundational business practices in the employee benefits world that translates into features like inventories of your programs, a digital front door to benefits and medical care for your employees. You also have to work really hard to preserve trust. You can't expect people to buy your product or follow your lead on business transformation without this trust. It's also a critical element between HR and risk. Again, HR and risk must work together to manage people risks using enterprise risk management approach, which is identifying, assessing, responding, and monitoring to risks. Next slide, please. Our survey, which was conducted a couple of months back, covered 5 pillars of people risk, which are having the greatest impact on businesses across the globe. These 5 pillars consider that the health and resilience of your people mirrors the health and resilience of your business. We further grouped these 25 key threats into these 5 pillars of people risks, where our respondents comprising of risk and HR leaders assessed the 3-year likelihood and severity of these risks for their organization. If you notice, the range covers both sides of the business resiliency, which is long-term threats and short-term pains. Given the multiple serious threats to businesses, tackling all of them can prove overwhelming to business leaders, but we strongly believe that the time is now for our HR and risk management teams to work closely together to mitigate people risks linked to areas such as cyber threats, benefits governance, changing nature of work, accelerated digitization, catastrophic personal life events, employee health and well-being, and more challenges facing our businesses today. Let's move into the poll questions. And that brings us to our first poll questions. We are going to tally some of the responses from our audience today to see how the report is speaking in the levels of people risk. Which among the following is the most pressing risk for your organization? It's a single choice question and your choices are in front of you: cybersecurity and data privacy, increasing cost of health, risk protection and well-being, workforce exhaustion, changing work of nature, changing nature of work, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Which of these is the most pressing risk for your organization? Do we have the responses? This is an interesting observation. We have cybersecurity, data privacy, and we have increasing cost of health, risk protection, and well-being topping the charts. Let's see what the survey respondents said to us. Can we go to the next slide? Thank you. Our double-blind research panel-based survey revealed this ranking, which is in front of you. The bottom x-axis shows how risk and HR managers assessed the likelihood of these risks occurring in the next 3 years. And the y-axis shows the severity of the impact on the organizations. These risks are all very concentrated, which confirms they are all important, but something needs to come first and something needs to come last. So we've calculated a risk rating score for each of these risks by multiplying the likelihood by severity. As you see, the top 5 risks are cybersecurity and data privacy, which was what some of you have also said. Administration and fiduciary is the next biggest people risk. This highlights increased regulatory and ESG pressures on businesses to ensure adequacy of benefits while at the same time managing economies of businesses. Changing nature of work is the third biggest risk as organizations, leaders, and individuals adapt to flexible working. Catastrophic personal life event is the next biggest people risk. It reflects how events with the power to disrupt someone's life can also disrupt the business. Employee and health and well-being is a top 5 people risk. Some of the critical ones, such as workforce exhaustion or pandemic and other communicable health conditions, have been rated the lowest, which is a serious blind spot for us. When we huddled up to analyze the ratings and findings, we were surprised to see some of these rankings. What could have prompted our respondents to rank them so low? Could it be because employers have checked all the benefit boxes and believe that this is the best way they could provide these benefits, or we lack a communication to extract key gaps in the support landscape? Because clearly there's a lot to be done here. Let's move on to the next poll question. We found that HR and risk managers could have a disconnect in the risk rating. Which of the following risks do you think requires greater collaboration between the two functions? The choices are in front of you. Environment, mental health, HR technology obsolescence, changing nature of work, employee health and well-being. Do we have the responses? So here are the responses in front of us. There's an equal amount of, equal count of people who said that changing nature of work and employee health and well-being is where there could be a potential disconnect and where there is a greater synergy, there is a greater collaboration which is required. And after that, HR technology obsolescence is where we require further collaboration and synergies to be brought in. Let's see what our report said in terms of these rankings between HR and risk leaders. HR and risk broadly agree on the top 5 people risks, except for the environment and social risk. Cybersecurity is a top risk in India. Remote and hybrid work models combined with rapid digitalization can pose a large risk in hands of untrained employees. Catastrophic personal life events is second most important concern for HR, but is not as high a priority for risk leaders. This disconnect can result in lower focus on critical support measures around short and long-term disabilities and death. When it comes to lesser risks, however, HR and risk have some differing priorities. HR is more inclined to worry about increasing health, risk protection, and well-being costs and mental health. Risk professionals are more likely to prioritize benefit policy and reward decision-making and accountability, interestingly, and HR technology obsolescence. So can we go to the third poll question? What, according to you, are the key barriers to addressing people risks at your organization? There are some interesting barriers that have come out, but we'd like to hear from you. What, according to you, are these barriers? Could it be lack of skilled resources or organizational complexity, including siloed or confused responsibility, difficulty changing personal behavior, legal, labor, and tax implications, or a lack of senior leadership vision and or engagement? What, according to you, are the key barriers? All right, so we have a majority of our audience today saying organizational complexity, including siloed or confused priorities and responsibilities. We have another set which says that difficulty changing personal behavior or a lack of senior leadership vision and or engagement. Soni is going to be asking some interesting questions around this when she goes into the panel conversation, but let me share what the barriers say as per the report. Legal, labor, and tax implication is the top barrier in health and safety, where changing legislative regulatory environment requires constant review and adaptation. Take, for example, the recent surrogacy bill requiring 36 months of medical cover, or the GST application on room rents. This could continue to be a challenge in pillar of talent practices, environmental and social, as well as governance and fiduciary. And failure to comply can have financial and reputational consequences. Lack of skilled resources to address risk is one of the top risks in all pillars except health and safety. This highlights the extent to which individuals with cybersecurity, ESG credentials, governance are in demand across all industries. Many businesses are only just starting to tackle these emerging risks. Too many competing priorities are the top barrier in managing talent practices. Businesses cannot thrive without thriving talent. While HR has talent attraction and retention as a top 10 risk, that is not one of the top 10 risks for risk managers. Organizational complexity is a top barrier for environment and social risk pillar. As businesses grow to, risks are becoming even more present across traditionally siloed work areas. This can result in an inconsistent and rigid behavior. Many are struggling to define who is responsible for owning both risks and mitigation efforts, which is leading to potential gaps. And can we go on the last slide, please, where we try and conclude the findings and suggest some navigations as we move ahead. Organizations must proactively identify and mitigate people risks despite the incoming challenges at the operational level. The enterprise risk management approach needs to be introduced for people risk as well. Identify, assess, respond, and monitor. I'd also highlight that every single one of the top 10 risks can be mitigated by employee benefits or how they are designed, delivered, and financed. By helping your businesses to anticipate people risks and working collaboratively to mitigate them, we hope to put you on the front foot to help your businesses to thrive. This was the key finding of what the reports navigated. And now I invite Soni to introduce Parima to us. But before that, can we also announce that our India report is absolutely ready. And as a part of the summary of today's conversation, we are going to share a copy of the India report also with our guests and audience. Thank you so much. And now I hand it over to Soni to introduce the panel, to introduce Parima and start the panel discussion. Over to you, Soni. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ima, for such an insightful presentation, outlining all the risks that both HR and risk managers thought. Very interesting, and I can't wait to dive into the conversation with my esteemed panelists, but indulge me for 2 minutes. I would very quickly like to introduce Parima for people who are not familiar with this. What is Parima? Parima is the Pan-Asian Risk and Insurance Management Association. It is a not-for-profit association which is dedicated for risk managers by risk managers. So the membership of Parima is purely for risk managers. We also have a lot of partners who help us in this risk awareness journey, but the commitment to the cause of risk awareness and best practices in risk management is what we seek to do across Asia Pacific. Can I have the next slide, please? So who can join Parima? So usually when we hear the word risk, we usually only think of people who are into just risk management on the business side. But for us, if you're managing any kind of risk in the organization, you are a risk manager. So if you are managing people risk as an HR professional, you're managing cybersecurity risk as a CISO professional, into internal audit, quality control, strategic risk, this is a community for you. And we would really welcome to have you on board. The Parima membership is free for all risk managers, and all you have to do is to go onto the site and register with a few details and join the community of these dynamic risk managers. Can I have the next slide, please? Just to give you a little bit of flavor of what we did last year. As you can see, the entire calendar for last year covers a whole gamut of topics. I mean, there's something relevant for everyone and a learning for all. The kind of topics that were covered, range from climate change to employee benefits to managing risks in a hardening market, including cybersecurity risk, and something even, as topical as how do you go about resuming business travel and what are the risks and safeties involved. So there is, an entire gamut of topics that we cover. All of these sessions were virtual in nature. We also have a flagship event, which is called the Resilience Week, which we do in November every year. And last year was an amazing week of learning with lots of senior leaders and global CEOs joining us and more than 60 speakers. And this was all virtual last year. Next slide, please. This year, we also have the Resilience Week. For a change, we are going to do one day in person. I think everybody is just waiting to meet each other in person. So this is going to happen on 10th of November in Singapore. But before that, we are also going to have a lot of country-focused sessions, which are going to be done virtually, and everybody can join into those sessions if you can't travel. Marsh is a very, very strong partner for Parima, and we do a lot of leadership series with Marsh, which are all about knowledge sharing. We in fact had a fantastic session on ESG very, very recently with Marsh, and Marsh is supporting us on a thought leadership for the ESG. This is again going to be a continuum of a couple of sessions that we are going to do, including one in the Resilience Week as well. We have had multiple conferences and C-suite conversations with the help of Marsh in partnership and collaboration. So I really look forward to seeing all of you. Like the best things in life are free. The membership is free. You can join in and you can access all of these sessions virtually. So for example, next week we are having a session on mental health challenges across Asia. So it doesn't matter if you are an India Parima member, you can access every single session virtually as well. So please do join in. We look forward to you being a part of this very vibrant risk community, to learning and adding value to this. And let me not take more time and dive right into the panel discussion. And I look forward to hearing from all my esteemed panelists. And I'm going to start with Shweta. Shweta, one of the main, the top risks that we did see was, cybersecurity and digitalization. And digitalization has like moved leaps and bounds in the pandemic. When we see the advent of new technology, for example, AI, AR, VR, I mean, it really helps businesses, bring about their efficiencies. But, what we also see is that it is a major contributor also to skill gaps. So how do you think organizations are evaluating these gaps, and how do you think they are assessing them when you look at, from a lens of, say, talent access and equity?
Yeah. Thank you, Soni, and thank you, Uma. I think it's such a pleasure to be a part of this panel and to talk about something which is close to my heart. And I'm sure those of you who have been in this field have really heard a lot about this big concern that organizations are facing today, which I think in the report has also come out fairly strongly, as well as the poll that we just did with the audience now, which is the digital skills gap and divide. And Soni, if you allow me, I think, we need to really look at, what has happened in the last couple of years to just get the context about the whole situation that we are facing that, because it's not that some of these technologies were not there earlier, they were there. For example, we have been hearing about AI and ML earlier as well. But I think in the last couple of years, especially during the pandemic and afterwards, we are really seeing that technology is really becoming a lifeline, not only for organizations. We are looking at economies, we are looking at governments, we're looking at how people are skilling and reskilling. So the giant, fast forward button to the future has been pushed, right? And many organizations were honestly caught a bit napping because they lacked the digital foundation, which was required to rapidly, kind of pivot into this new stark reality, a reality which is about the digital performance gap, and which seemed becoming wider by the day, when we were really looking at what has happened in the last, couple of years. Even if you look at, the Mercer Marsh People Risk Report, which talked about, the changing nature of work, of course, we're talking about, all that which has happened with the pandemic, but a lot of it is also the automation and AI advances, which has really been anticipated that maybe half of the workforce would need to get reskilled in the next few years by 2025. There is reported that 75 million jobs will be lost. So this is something which has been kind of building up, and organizations who had this great ambitions that we will digitally transform have suddenly felt with this, that this space is something which is difficult for them to embrace, because they struggle to recruit, they struggle to keep the highly technical workers within the organization. But I have a different perspective to this. I do feel that this is not all gloom and doom. Organizations who have been looking and, kind of struggling with this have been looking at the problem a little too narrowly. There are leading organizations who have stepped up to use technology in extraordinary ways, by thinking out of the box. Organizations have been looking at what we are calling, especially in the tech world, as something called as technology democratization, where we are saying that we need to circumvent the skills gap. So it's not that you will always have, people who are ready. You will always have skill gaps, which will be huge. So there is a parallel strategy which is coming up, which really looks at closely, closing the disconnect between the workforce and the technology which are needed to deliver the most creative solutions. For example, if you look at NLP, if you look at low code platforms, we in technology world use this term as low code, no code, right, Robert? If you talk about process automation using robotics, these are ways in which we are democratizing technology, in which we are really putting powerful capabilities in the hands of people across the business. So it's not that you need to teach people to become expert coders, but you really need to train them to think about technologies. So it will be something which is very, very, easier to navigate, and I do believe it will close the gaps in terms of, in terms of people having technology access across. So you don't need the tier 1 cities and the tier 1, tier 2 colleges. You can actually go to smaller towns, take in your people, do the right kind of, training where you don't need to teach them technologies, but you really need them to appreciate technology and get onto it. So I do believe, Soni, that there is a way in which we can, really, help build this great divide. It will need us to look into newer, more innovative ways. It will look us to have a greater access to technology going beyond some of our most usual natural sources. And that is how I do believe there is an opportunity for us to address it more proactively, address it more positively.
Fantastic, Shweta. That was an amazing answer. And it is so refreshing to hear a positive take on the war of talent. We've just been hearing doom, gloom messages across on this. So thank you for that. But one of my concerns, and Gopal, let me ask you this. One of the potential blind spots that we saw in the data is sort of a misalignment around the benefits management life cycle. Do you think that businesses face a risk, from possible data breaches due to this kind of an accelerated digitization, as we saw that, cybersecurity again has ranked #1. So what is your take on that?
So thanks for the question, Soni, and thank you so much, Marsh, for the opportunity. So the simple answer to your question, Soni, is yes. Okay, but let's understand why we say yes. So I don't know how many of us are tracking what happened 2 days before in Parliament of India. We withdrew the bill that was data protection bill, which was pending for discussion from 2019. So this area is an evolving area, and that is established with the fact that when this bill was withdrawn for amendments, the bill had 81 amendments proposed in just 3 years, right? Because the draft was finalized in 2019. And on top of 81 amendments, actually, it also had 12 recommendations to be made. So in effect, roughly 93 new things to be taken care just in 3 years. So certainly this is an area which is evolving. Now, what is this area likely to do? Right? Why we are saying privacy and breach of privacy is becoming critical day by day. So this protection of digital privacy to individual is supposed to take care of a couple of things. That is, first, protection of your personal data, use and flow of this data, right? And the third is create relationship of trust between you, which is your personal data, and the entities, those are processing this data, right? Now let's understand what we do as people, those who are administering, say, benefits for the system, right? So earlier, when you see our roles couple of years back, largely the discussion was either with insurance companies or say with TPAs or say for that matter brokers. So all our information was flowing between these agencies. But now the discussion of benefits has gone far beyond what it was earlier, right? So today, the broker agencies are entering the organization with insurance marketplace, right? Finance companies are entering organizations with easy model to lend money, right? We are connecting with organizations to give, say, a doctor on call facility, right? Or say we are connecting with organizations just to buy medicine online. And all these agencies, right, interact with you in different form. So they may be interacting with you through your domain mapping. They may be interacting through you on a single sign-on facility. Your data may be sitting there, or you are just exchanging data on email, right? So if you really see, there is now enough exposure for the reason that what you are dealing with is subject to law, right? Now, is this law something common? No, the law is still not common. You see, probably UK has recently passed a bill on GDPR, right, which is dealing with data privacy and also localization of data. US had HIPAA for some time now, but that is largely controlling the healthcare information, right? But the world is moving more for the reason how the social media or the entire digital systems are working, right? So I think the risk is genuine. Maybe the pace is slightly slow because the law is still taking shape. And hence the most important thing for all of us is to remain updated as to what is going on. And till that time that is happening, I think to start with, we should certainly have a data protection agreement with any agency that we are dealing with. And let us say if we are not clear as to what is the law or what we should do if there is a situation in hand, I think the best thing is to go to the InfoSec people, those who are supposed to take care of the risk for the organization as a whole. And I'm sure we should have a broad-based policy, at least in terms of what can be generally done and what cannot be done, right? So with this, I think that can be a starting point, but there's a lot to do. And probably I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Gopal. In fact, the amount of points that you listed out where all our data goes is actually food for thought, because I don't think any of us really sit back and realize, what are the different exposure points when it comes to personal and identifiable data. So thank you for that. Ima, one question to you. Now, what about organizations that do sort of get this right? I mean, how do you think those organizations are capitalizing on the tech advances, and how do you think they're creating a tech-enabled health and benefit ecosystem?
Very good question, Soni. And I'm just thinking of, how to bring the conversation in a very balanced format between data protection and what the reward leaders and benefit providers are looking at. So we did a study very recently where we noticed that almost 71% of the employers still take average 1 week to look for a simple answer related to employee benefit if asked a question, because they don't know where the answer is sitting. There are multiple platforms, and I'm not saying they're still in an Excel or a manual world. We have multiple platforms in a format where people are, there are sectors which are moving into hyper app situations, a stacking of technology to say that I have everything under one roof. We hear how, the employee today has a 7-second attention span. We hear how nobody has the time to kind of wait for a communication to come to them. They need it where they are, when they need it, how they need it, in whichever language or format they need it. So technology is definitely playing a very interesting role. Now there are 2-3 very interesting questions. Does it solve a bigger purpose than an ease of administration? Definitely yes. How? It is considered as one of the biggest distributors of solutions and initiatives in the equitable and social environment, because then you're not differentiating between senior and not so senior employee category. And this whole MMB ecosystem of flipping the benefit pyramid, which we very proudly say that it's the time to flip the benefit pyramid to address the healthcare needs of everybody who's not senior enough in the organization. Technology is solving that need to a very large extent, because we are now meeting people wherever they are, however they are, whichever state of mind they are. That is one point. Second interesting point is, what are the key barriers? I sometimes feel that, we hear, is it funding the problem, or is it the change management the problem in terms of technology? Or lastly, is it communicating the criticality and need of the technology needs of the HR, businesses? Because they might have a seat on the table, but do they have the right budgets on the table? Okay, so that's when I was revealing the report, I said that if you call people as one of the most expensive assets, then please don't change and don't short charge the budgets. They need it. And not only because it's fancy shade cards on the screen, it is because it is the biggest quantum of equitable distribution of benefits and communication from the reward standpoint. So that is technology. We do hear, and this one interesting aspect, that when somebody said the data is the new oil, they were not wrong, because in this whole so what's of data, the so what of information, the 1,000 cells of information, it is getting extremely cumbersome for advisors like us to pick out those 3 things which matter to decision makers. And technology is playing a very important role in the business of analytics and keeping decisions simple, relevant, to the point, and reaching the decision makers when they need it, not when we are able to provide them. It's real now when you need the information. So technology is like answer to everything. And there is no running away from the need of the technology. So enough said about that, but time to do it now.
Wonderful. It is important, as you said, to leverage technology to get to the solutions and to get them when they are required. So kudos to that. Amit, a quick question to you. Throughout the pandemic, we've heard that resilience is the mantra. But also, we've also seen that, unmanaged workforce health and well-being culture is leading actually to poor business resilience and also to operational cost escalations. As we also saw that, cost escalation and benefits management is, again, ranked very high when we saw the audience poll. So what is your message for, benefit providers and risk leaders in organizations when it comes to, provisioning for improved and advanced healthcare programs?
Thanks, Soni, for asking this question. And I'll try to keep my answer very simple on this topic because it depends what lens you want to use when you're seeing this topic. I just take a hint that let's say what Alima said, that the employees are most critical and the most valuable assets. So when we put a value and the criticality on something, I think the cost should take a backseat. So what is important when we are managing the risk in this segment is how we as a corporates and how we as a leaders can play a role in the well-being of each individual, whether it is the emotional, whether it's a financial, whether it's occupational, whether it's a health, and other topics, so far and so. That is point number one. Point number two, I think during a pandemic, when you said the expenses, overhead cost, I think the direction is more towards the outflow of the premiums, right? I will say that was a one of its scenario in the 100 years. So I think if we go by the studies, the roughly 20% or 25% of your overall the claims had come from the from the pandemic, to COVID. But does it mean or we should use that as a yardstick? Answer is no, because the well-being of any individual, I think we as leaders, we have to go one step beyond, I will say beyond, because our focus should be employee and their well-being. So there was a survey which was done, I think, by the many, when I see the many journals, the emotional or the mental well-being, one of the top risks which are there. Why do the top risk? It was not because something will happen to me. If something goes wrong with my family, so my employee is healthy, fine, efficiency good. But if, let us say, my wife or children, they are not well, my efficiency won't be 100%. So the risk to the company is much more than the overhead cost. So I think we as the leaders have to see how we can add value to the individuals, because that is something that the ROIs will come in the long term, right? It is, we should not go with the, I will say, with the kind of a approach. We sow a seed today and we need a results today. We have to keep a patience on this topic, because the wellness and the well-being is a long journey, and that journey has to be clearly put in place. And the insurance data, it's a very small part, right? Because if you see your data, maybe 2% of your population or 3% of population might be using it. So when you take that data, can you use that? The answer yes and no, because these are the, let us say, guys who have already into the orange or the red zone of the health index. So you have to see how you can move back to the orange, or from orange to green, and help them on the journey. So I think there's a requirement of a change in approach, how the industry is saying, and we have to deal it. And we should not put a cost tag, to be honest, on this, because journey is long and the results will come. And nothing is much more important than your people, because it's your people who makes a company, right? If they are not there, all your topics, all your objectives, you won't be able to fulfill. So that is my stand on this.
Fantastic, Amit. You're right. It is just so crucial not just to look at the individual, but the entire ecosystem when it comes to, his mental health and his well-being, and how that in turn affects his productivity in the organization. So point very well taken that, do not compromise on, the people cost here. But again, Gopal, if I may shift to you, and I also understand that you manage a lot of geographies. So, globally, we do see concerns of recession and inflation. At the same time, as Amit said, employees are priority. And we've also seen that health and well-being is ranking among, the top 5 risks. So how do you come to, synergy in this kind of a dichotomy? Issues about the cost of care. And can you sort of give a little bit of an idea, in different parts of the world, how do you see benefit design and inclusions being addressed? And what is your point of view on managing employee health needs across different geographies?
So Soni, I'll start with the line you concluded your Parima introduction. You said best thing in life are free, right? And probably I will reach there only. And I will agree with Amit in terms of how things are changing, but I will probably slightly disagree only to the extent that cost has to be not in the scene. And I'll connect the two together. And since you have said, discuss more about things happening outside India, so let me connect all the dots together, right? So when you see how benefits are evolving in India, actually somehow we are chasing what has already happened in West, right? So our design influence and our components are largely things which are probably already experienced in the Western world, right? And hence, it's not about what is happening there and what is happening in India. It is more a question of whatever has happened there. What is that we are learning from that, right? Also, the world outside is also different in terms of who takes care of the care. Correct. So take an example, countries like say UK, France, Singapore, Australia, they have a government sponsored benefits, right? Similarly, when you go to countries like USA, highly regulated, right? But not necessarily a government sponsored benefit. But when you come to countries like India, Philippines, South Africa, or say Sri Lanka, Costa Rica, these are the countries where the cost that citizens are supposed to pick up, somehow we as an employer are trying to pick up that cost, right? But in terms of what is the expectation, I think everywhere the expectation remains similar, right? And hence it is important for us to understand how is this cost that is basically an underlying theme of the design is being taken, right? So if you really see insurance as a concept, right? Insurance is supposed to take care of a contingency, correct? Because if you are paying a premium, you are paying a premium for the contingency, but the moment you start paying for something which is surety, your cost is going to be equivalent to the claim, not only claim plus the administration cost, right? So you are not really saving anything out of that. The only reason why we use insurance probably is only to take tax structure advantage or advantages like that, right? So now when we are saying economy is looming, or for that matter, are we really flexible enough to modify our structure the moment the business prospects are changing? Let us understand what is that which is hitting us. And then I will come to your point, Amit, and then I 110% agree with what you are saying. Because so long as you are dealing with an contingency, which is an unfortunate contingency, everything needs to be taken care. I agree with 110%. And in fact, not only it should be taken care, it should be taken care with speed and empathy. And we have tested that during COVID time. Correct. But I will expand that discussion to situations which are more lifestyle related, which are more routine, or which may be very special events. And let me give one example so that we connect this discussion more from the design part of it, right? So let us say when I'm saying something like a lifestyle related, let us take an example like a stress. When I'm saying something like, which is say daily routine, let us take an example of OPD. And when I'm saying something like a special event, let us take an example of maternity, right? Now, different organizations will react differently when it comes to the discussion as to how you are dealing with these three components other than unfortunate contingency. Unfortunate contingency, no discussion, 100% employer probably should put the foot forward and take care of that, right? But I think where Amit started, and I would want to conclude, is that these are the three areas where there is a lot that can be done. But when you will see, let us take an example. If you are suffering from stress, right? Stress might lead to say diabetes, obesity, or say migraine, hypertension, right? And we as an employer can keep paying to treat your hypertension. We can keep paying to treat your migraine. But the question is that, are we treating your stress, right? And then when you will go and see, if you do a stress session for the benefit of employee, you will find there is no turnaround. There's nobody who is attending those sessions, or even if they are attending in proportion to your population, that is insignificant, right? I think the discussion is happening largely around the EAP on the mental wellness. But when you will see the actual data as to how many people actually are using it, you will be really surprised that it is not more than 2 or 3% of the population. But when you will see the cost, you will find more than 50. So in our case, Philippines produces more than 50% cost coming only out of OPD, right? So when you will analyze your cost, you will find 60-70% cost is pertaining to things which are lifestyle related, right? So what we are doing as a company, so obviously I'm also in the market, you are also in the market, so your benefit has to be market competing, if not ahead of the market, right? So you will not do anything which by design somebody can take on black and white and say that, oh, you are not giving me this and somebody else is giving me. So you give everything. So I agree with Amit. I don't think there is any compromise there, because you have to sustain in the market with the same resource supplying market, right? Where actually we have changed our focus is to how to deal with issues which are more lifestyle related. And in fact, not only in the preventive space or mental wellness space, we as a company have gone further ahead, and actually now we have started dealing with the happiness quotient of the employee. And now we are curating material that is dealing with how an employee can become happy. And we are dealing with topics, I'll just give you a couple of topics. We are dealing with topics such as exercising gratitude, right? We are dealing with topics like mindfulness and resilience. We are dealing with topics something like cultivating growth mindset. We are dealing with topics which is promoting kindness and social activities. We are dealing with topic which is encouraging outdoor stimulus, right? And we strongly believe that unless we hit these aspects of your day-to-day life, right, we will not be able to handle your stress. And until the time you are stressed and then you remain stressed, our cost in terms of treating your stress is not going to go down. And in fact, from the Eastern world, when you compare the cost on the Western world, the cost is significantly different. And hence, when we talk in Indian context, our cost is going to blow out of proportion, right? So my simple point is this, that as an industry, obviously every company wants to be ahead of others. And hence people keep adding new element to the cost. I think the question should be, are we really leveraging the tools that we have in terms of managing that? And what are the parameters or say benchmarks we are using? And who is being held accountable to see that those parameters are being met? So long as the organizations are really able to focus there, I think we will be in control of things. Thank you.
Thank you, Gopal. Those are some amazing insights, and really nice to hear of the innovative approaches to employee mental health well-being and stress management that you're taking. So wonderful to hear that. Shweta, one question to you. Now, everybody sort of established, and especially during the pandemic, that people are your business. People come first. Even when we saw Ema's slide, it said people, purpose, and then profit. So you put people at the top of things. What we've also seen that, the way, the pandemic has evolved, and, now that people have, seen what a flexible work culture looks like, there is no going back. Yeah. So employees are, now very clear. They have certain expectations from, their organizations, and that's like changed forever now. So how do you think organizations are offering holistic solutions that work effectively, not just for the organization, for the business, but actually meeting every distinct needs across a diverse spectrum of employees?
Yeah. No, after the digital skill divide, topics, only the future of work and the flexible work is the other buzzword, right, that we kept on hearing. And you're so right, that I think we never had so much of a need, right in front of us to look at employee segments and their unique needs, right? And we have largely been painting the broad stroke on anything which comes to benefits, and personalization is something which is becoming, really, really more relevant. But again, taking an optimistic stand, Soni, I do believe this is an opportunity for organizations to reimagine, what we are offering to our employees. And at the end of the day, the right balance. And I agree when we are talking about where does the cost go, where there is an opportunity for us, each organization would have a very, very, very different balance. I'll give you one example that we are facing in SAP, or when it comes to looking at, employee segments and how the future of work and how flexibility is being offered. We went into a hybrid mode from 1st of July this year. We took a stance that we would offer our employees an opportunity to work from whatever days they want in, coming to the office, and then for focused work, they can work out of their homes. It's a perfect balance between when you need to collaborate, when you need to work on. We also have a very healthy kind of child care benefit provided. We have, tie-ups wherever we have offices, close to our offices, to our daycare centers, right? Where, working mothers from our organization, put their kids and then they come to work. Now, look at how that entire paradigm has shifted, where what do we expect, a working mom who's coming 2 days to office to do on the rest of the 3 days? Do we expect, her to come to office, close to office, put her child in the daycare that we have decided, go back home, and then work from there and come back to the office and pick up the child? That is something which we had never imagined, right? That was something which had never been envisioned. So now we are looking at, kind of what is the kind of, who are the aggregators? What do we do when, in terms of providing childcare benefit for a segment which we had, we thought we are doing great because we do have an opportunity of a, childcare center next to an office, and that solves all our, challenges and issues with, working mothers and makes them more productive. So those are the areas where we do feel there is a need for us to relook at it. As things like, benefits. We do have great stuff on transportation provided to our employees. Now, why do you provide a bus service to somebody who's coming 2 days or 3 days to office? Is there a way for us to, leverage the public transport in a way that employees still have that flexibility? And what are we doing to help them around it? So, what essentially is really important is, and something which is a huge important, very, very important from a resilience perspective, from a future perspective, is that how you are, we are personalizing, the needs and the benefits, for the different employee segments. The broad brush strokes, the ones where we are deciding something which works for everybody is no longer going to ring true. So, we have to really look at that aspect and, look at which is the need, how are we catering to, what kind of employee segment they are coming. But one thing is I do believe, Sony, which is going to be very important, that the organizations who will take, this distributed, which is on the future of work and, how we are, where we are located, what we are doing with our employees, but at the same time who are, physically distributed, but connected creatively. You empower them with technology, you make sure that these guys are, productive, even when they are not coming to the office environment, and they are able to innovate together. And the together part is very, very important. I think those are the organizations which will come out much more stronger. Those are the organizations where we would be able to segmentize our benefits and do, well with them. And, they will absolutely emerge much more, creative and stronger in the long run.
Fantastic, Shweta. I mean, if I may use a metaphor, you've so very clearly said that, yes, you need to have the forest view, but you need to account for every single tree.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think that's what organizations really need to do, and when they want to be on top of, getting their people risk right. Ima, one question to you. This is again to take, from what Gopal said when he was talking about mental health, and he said that how many people do use EAP? I mean, barely 1 or 2%, but that is what the critical part is, that we are actually looking at the mental health iceberg. It is the 1 or 2% who are using this, who are probably the critical ones, but there is a mental health crisis that is going on. And if I sort of remember the WHO report, it said that mental health costs us about $1 trillion globally when it comes to productivity. So how do you think, different organizations are using new and reformed ways in countering the mental health crisis?
So that this is a very close to our heart question. We'll try to keep the answer as short as possible, but still we'll try to do justice with the question. See, it's a mental health brings us to the conundrum of conversation to say that let's stop looking outside the box. Let's look inside the box now. Okay, enough of out of the box thinking when it comes to mental health. When you say mental health is an iceberg, I shared a data point with you the other day when we were on the call that there is an average 11-year delay between diagnosis and treatment when it comes to mental health. And I mean, one has to really sit in a few seconds of silence to understand that we're talking about 11-year delay between diagnosis and treatment. Other interesting point around mental health is that we have fast forwarded to 2 years of pandemic, and we're still in a state of crisis where people are saying that it's a shadow pandemic. And we think that we've done enough, but we've not done enough, because we're just not able to understand that what is mental health. It is a mental health is nothing but a today going to tomorrow and to day after tomorrow. There are 4 stages of a mental health or mental well-being, which is today I'm feeling very good, so I might just use a mindfulness or a yoga. Tomorrow I might feel slightly anxiety, or something is bothering me. I might just go for something which is more assisted ways to stay on the path and everything. The 3rd day I might develop subclinical symptoms where I might need certain diagnoses and symptom checks to say that, what can be done around it. Then comes a stage where you reach the clinical symptoms, where your policies start triggering to say you need somebody to speak to, you need a psychologist, you need some prescription drugs, you need everything. And then comes the massive treatment, that the long drawn treatment. Now, there are several cases where, they might have reached that stage, they would have come back after getting rehabilitation, but most of us are actually fluctuating between 1, 2, and 3 every day. And where the gaps happen is between your yoga and mindfulness apps to your clinical symptoms. And that's why neither EAP is speaking the language, nor your yoga and your mindfulness are speaking the language, because out of the hundreds of mental health apps available in the market, not even single digit have published an evidence-based data on what they've understood out of it. There is no data to support any findings. So what we believe very strongly, and coming to now the solutioning part of it, is understand the concept of continuum, because when you said iceberg, what is iceberg? What you see above the iceberg is sickness, disability claims, medical claims, your absenteeism, your lack of productivity. But what's happening beneath the iceberg is your potential, those borderline suicide and self-harm and domestic abuse, alcoholism, intoxication, substance abuse, your mistakes at work, fear of failure, social isolation, not imposter syndromes. Everybody's talking about it. Does it not have an impact on, mental health and so on? So that's where as advisors, what we say is that work on the continuum. We won't ever reach a stage of perfection to say that you've got it all. Let's continue to address that today's need will not be tomorrow's need, and you need everything to keep the resiliencies there. So that's what we are hearing. That's what we are trying, and we are striving to keep the conversations back on the track. And thinking inside the box is very important when it comes to mental health. Look at your own people. So that's the answer. Couldn't keep it short, but I hope it helps.
Absolutely. I think it's a conversation that needs to be, discussed in, the most important forums within the organization and continuously. So you have to keep your foot on the pedal on this one. You just can't afford to take it off. I think we are running out of time, but I will sneak in one last quick question to Amit. Amit, the other buzzword is ESG, and we've seen that environmental credentials are very vital to attracting employees. In fact, we've seen that 61% of people polled said that this issue is very important to the workforce. It's also a prerequisite for shareholders and customers. So organizations are working on climate change policies, and if they don't, they do risk losing not just the talent but investment, business. The implications are much larger. India doesn't really have mandatory disclosures, for all of this, unless it comes to, like, say, listed companies. How do you see, some bit of crystal ball gazing here? How do you see this shaping up for India in the future?
Thanks for the question. This very dear topic was very close to us as a watch when we see as a sustainability or ESG as a topic. So I will try to answer in the 2 parts. One part is asking a question to ourselves. To perform a duty, do we need a guideline and regulations? Answer simply is no. Similarly, a sustainability or ESG is a kind of a duty which everybody has to perform, right? It has to be a basic hygiene. So whether there is a guideline or not, that should not become a kind of the guiding factor for any organization per se. So because the guidelines or the directives, they just set a path, but it is a companies who has to work on that path by having a strong principles and the value systems in place. So that is where it comes into picture. I always say, if you have to cross the road, you have to use your common sense. You can't go and blame other person for that if you are, let us say, hit and run. So similarly, when we see the surveys, the sustainability is going to have a huge impact, honestly, from source to supply, even to the order fulfillment. So if you see the surveys which has done by some of the leading journals in the world, the customer decisions in going forward will be driven by these topics. That is experience, what impact it has on the society, planet, health, and the last comes affordability. So earlier, if you see the earlier generation, the affordability was like this. So now we can see this is taking a topic which is there. And similarly, this topic is also having impact on the employees. Because today's generation, whether we call millennia, X, Y, and Z, they're totally focused on that. They're driven by that. They want to see, I will say they feel proud. They want to feel proud with the brand with which they are associated. So you feel proud with any brand by knowing that what they are doing for a society, right? It's very important. And this is, I will say, the ESG or sustainability is one of the best tools or the platforms which will drive this system in our entire ecosystem, mindset in their entire ecosystem, which will help in driving the right stuff in the right direction. That is very, very important. Because that's the reason why it becomes very important to turn ambitions into action and actions into the impact. So that is where this ESG is going to do. And when you see from the, let us say, from the India storyline point of view, India's story has just started, right? But there are the companies who have been living. And I feel proud that we as a Bosch has been living this story from a long, long time. So in fact, in our recent annual report, we have come up with the ESG report. So we have been awarded one of the best place to work. We are carbon neutral, the CO2 neutral on the 1 and 2. We have achieved the carbon neutrality award in our plants in India. So, but we still feel we are still in the beginning of a journey, because the moment you put some end point, the journey ends. So where you reach, then it has to start, and the direction, guidance, and the involvement has to come from the top, and it has to be communicated in a regular manner with each and every one who is in your organization. So it becomes a very critical part. So from the employee point of view, it will play a very critical role in the attraction and the retention also, because S is a very important factor in these three pillars. So S revolves in that. So let us say the organization have to put literally all the focus into the S. And whatever questions we have asked till now, I think everything fits into the S, whether it's a tech changes which are happening, whether it's a well-being, whether it's the cost, everything is a S if we see it. E and S, E and G is something to be achieved, but S is something which is very psychological, which you have to literally put your day in and day out into that. So that will be my take on that.
That's a great input, Amit. And my takeaway is that don't make it about disclosures, but make ESG into your ethos of your own organization, and it has to be a moving goalpost. So it's never that you've ever achieved everything that you need to. So thank you so much for the insights. I do have a lot more questions that I want to pick the brains of this lovely panel, but unfortunately we have run out of time. So I am going to with a big round of thanks to everybody, hand it over to Ima.
Thank you, Soni. And I'm tempted to ask Gopal for any concluding views, because when I was reviewing with him, he had some very excellent insights around this entire initiative, people initiative and community initiative. So some very quick thoughts, Gopal, and then we are going to take two questions from the audience before we close. You're on mute. If you could unmute your line, please.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Amit. So Amit, I think, has covered the ESG angle really in detail. Let me just cover. So when you say people, it is internally focused, but let me cover something which is externally focused, right? And I will probably give maybe one or two lovely examples of things that we do. So we are a children-focused organizations on our external activity. We work for their holistic development. So some of the activities that do, I'll just take maybe one example. So I don't know how many of you know there is a 1098 child line, right? That works pan India. We are a company who is working with them to make sure that every call that lands in their desk is answered, right? Right now, I think the efficiency levels are somewhere around 75–80%. And my goal is to make sure that the efficiency level goes 100%. So need to answer your point, you need to have a forest view, but take care of each tree. So for me, each distress call is a support to a child, right? And then I want to make sure that call is picked up and answered by somebody. So those are some of the initiatives. Maybe let me pick one more just for the benefit of everyone. We also do a powerful self-defense program for women kids. So it is meant for girl child. It is meant for the child in the classes of 6, 7, 8, 9, right? When they are in the formative age. The idea is to boost their self-confidence in terms of when they go out of home, they should feel comfortable. They should feel with full of confidence, right? So this self-defense techniques are basically the techniques to protect themselves, right? And then this is normally done with girls coming from underprivileged background, right? Actually, we have many more things. We are also doing a lot of things in the space of cyber smart and other spaces, but I know there's a shortage of time. Absolutely. So probably I'll stop here. Thank you so much.
But these are very, very insightful, and I'm sure we would love to hear more from all of you on what you're doing on the community side of things. There are two questions. There's one on the chat, and I'll just simplify the question to say, Shweta, this is I would love to have you answer it. That in the world, in the space of competing priorities between economies of business, where there is a performance pressure, the only measurable outcome is the performance. How do you, as a business leader, as a HR leader, how do you envisage that employees should maintain a good physical and mental health in the realm of competencies and performances? A very it's a good question, and we couldn't resist.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Maya. I think I can completely empathize, because this is definitely one of the things we keep on saying, that when it comes to overall well-being, I think it's always, the performance takes the pips, the balance, right? And you say, okay, whether the person is really getting productive and being efficient at the work. I think I do feel the balance changing, honestly, and, organizations being very, very open to the fact, saying that the wellness actually contributes to the overall business performance. If you have an organization, where your employees are not feeling the best, on a day when they have to turn up and, be most productive, you would really not be able to do that. And I think we are role modeling. Quite a few organizations are role modeling, where leaders are coming and saying that, it's a bad day, let's not do my meetings, because I really don't feel at the best of, my health. And I think if across the organization, it becomes a conversation and not something which is brushed under the carpet, I do feel through role modeling, a lot of this is getting addressed. It will be a journey, and I don't deny to the fact that it will take us, some more time, like we have had on other topics, where we got a little comfortable over a period of time with people being open about their challenges, whether it is physical, mental well-being. I think this is something which will take a little time, but I do see positive conversations already happening. And the more we talk, the better the situation is going to become.
Yeah, so I think conversation basically is the key to a lot of, elements that we face in today's, corporate environment. And with that, we've come to our end of panel discussion. We have a raised hand from the audience. Niladri, if you could unmute Stephen's line. Stephen, do you have a question? Do you want us to unmute your line? You wish to ask it? Stephen, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
I'm sorry, it was by mistake that I have clicked on that.
No problem at all. No problem at all. But thank you so much. So I think that brings us to the end of our today's conversation. We hope that you found the conversation insightful. You found the report speaking, a language which is resonating with most of the business leaders. We understand where our priorities lie. We've heard from our panel members, esteemed panel members, on what are some of the best practices, what are the ways to navigate some of the difficult conversations that we're facing today. And we look forward to have to have a summary created out of this conversation. We also will be sharing the India version of the report very soon along with it. And thank you once again for joining. And thank you, dear panel members. Thank you for joining the conversation. We were fortunate to have you with us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Such a
Thank
pleasure.
you. Thank you,
Thanks a lot,
Soni.
Hima. Thanks, Soni.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you, everyone. Bye.